Bombshell news, everybody. We got one of the most bold trades you could probably see towards the trade deadline. Usually trade deadline, you just see a few players here and there that goes to a different team, maybe role players or whatnot. But that is not what we just had on this random Saturday night. We got premier players being traded to other teams. The Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Lakers have traded away both their star pieces, and Luka Doncic going to the Lakers and Anthony Davis going to the Mavs. Now, there are some few other side pieces to that. So the Lakers will get Max Kleber and Markieff Morris. I don't think Markieff Morris is going to even play, to be honest. But Max Kleber is a really great addition. And then the Dallas Mavericks will get Anthony Davis, of course, and Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick that I'll explain a little bit later because I think that's actually a great pick for them. But this trade right now is not equal. But before we get into the trade, let's talk about what basically broke down the trust, broke down the relationship to the point where they felt each franchise believed that they need to make a move on from their star. Now let's start with Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic, like I said before, is one of the best players in the NBA, especially one of the best upcoming players. Most people, in my opinion, don't understand how young he is. He's like 25 years old, but the way that he plays and breaks down the game, you wouldn't think that he's that young. And he's kind of been in the NBA for a very long time now. But it hasn't been all sweet for him. It's been a little bit rocky for him and the Dallas Mavericks. Now, recently, he's been out with this little calf strain. I believe that's what it is. But the Mavs have taken notice with what I have taken notice and what other people have taken notice is that his conditioning is just not there. And if you're going to commit to a supermax with this guy, with somebody just in general, you have to be confident in one of the most foundational parts of being an athlete, and that is just your conditioning being good enough for you to stay on the floor. But they obviously didn't think so. And they thought that this was such of a issue that they saw that his lack of conditioning also impacted his defense. And it's hard to score 120 points on a night in, night out basis where you're also giving up a lot of points on the defensive end. And a lot of people will say, well, actually when he's playing on ball, he's actually pretty good. And that's not wrong. He's actually a decent on-ball defender. But when it really breaks down is when he's not guarding somebody with the ball. He's just basically a statue. And that's something that the Lakers are going to have to figure it out. But basically, they saw this stuff, and they saw the lack of defense. They saw the lack of conditioning, and honestly, they probably saw his little attitude sometimes that he has that it can be a little bit negative and just soul sucking to the team. I mean, you see this all the time where either he's complaining to the refs that basically gives the other team easy free throws and breaks up any type of advantage or any type of momentum that they had in the game, or just whenever his teammates does something that he doesn't like, you can see him moping. Which, again, the Lakers are going to have to figure out how they're going to broach this topic. But in the end of the day, there were concerns about whether or not he's going to be the future of the franchise, which is very valid in my opinion. But the same could be said for Anthony Davis. Now, I've made videos ad nauseum talking about Anthony Davis because I believe Anthony Davis is a very unique player with very unique skill sets. He is a great offensive threat. He actually has a post game, and he's great defensively. But there are some things that sometimes might be a little bit out of his game that he cannot control when that is his injury prone. But also his mouth. I believe this trade that the Lakers did was not done purely out of just, basketball one-on-one. I believe this was done mostly out of spite. I think the Lakers got sick and tired of Anthony Davis going to the media to talk bad about their upper management and their coaches, and they said, we can't keep having this. He did the same thing last year with Darvin Ham, and he did it recently saying that they need a center because he doesn't like playing center, which in my honest opinion, I don't get because you're obviously one of the tallest guys up there. Of course, the pieces fit better when you're not a center, but it's just kind of like one of those things where you just got to tell him, man, just play center, dude, and just be good at it. But at the end of the day, this wasn't a trade based on, numbers. Because you still have to figure out how is Luka Doncic and LeBron James going to play with each other, which I'll get into later. It was mostly done based off the fact that they are just sick and tired of Anthony Davis. They're sick and tired of his mouth. They don't like the fact that, well, if you're going to talk all this stuff, you cannot be injury prone, which I will give credit this year. He's been pretty healthy. But he has multiple instances where he is making statements, causing risk between him and the upper management, And they always have seen him as like, an extension of LeBron James. But you can only have that grace for so long up until they believe that, well, we can't deal with you anymore. And so this trade, like I said multiple times before, this is not a basketball trade. This is a trade out of spite. And the Lakers did this willingly. But this is not necessarily a bad trade at all. So here's the breakdown of the trade. The Los Angeles Lakers are getting Luka, Max Kleber, and Markieff Morris. How is this going to work? Historically, LeBron James does great when he does not have a traditional center. And that is something that the Lakers kind of always had like a weird little mix in, because Anthony Davis is not really a willing three-point shooter. He is good enough to be dangerous a little bit, but there's multiple times and multiple instances where he just simply is avoiding to shoot the three. Maxi Kleber is not that guy. He will sit in that corner all game if he has to, crash the boards whenever somebody misses, and shoot the three. But what does that do to the offense? That leaves the paint wide open, which is something that Luka Doncic has historically just been great in attacking the paint. But LeBron James is great at that as well. And so opening a lot of that space and not allowing other bigs to kind of like, impede LeBron James's movement towards the basket is just going to simply be great for the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, the issue is that the Mavs actually had valid criticisms and valid concerns about Luka Doncic. How are you going to mitigate his lack of defense and LeBron James's elderliness? LeBron is going to give you spurts of great athleticism and, pretty much active defense. But, he is pretty slow. And so they have to figure out lineup-wise, how are they going to make this work? How is Luka Doncic going to fit for the Los Angeles Lakers? Especially in their offense being more motion-driven, something that he's not necessarily accustomed to, even though Jason Kidd has done a pretty good job in making that the new Mavs motto with two very ball-dominant players. JJ Redick has a very hefty job in front of him because this is not an easy fit. It can fit, but it's not easy. Now, next for the Mavs. All right. The Mavs, they have AD, they have Kyrie. They can make it work. The only issue is that there are certain players who just simply won't be able to be on the court. Maybe they'll move Daniel Gafford to the 5, maybe. I don't really know how it works. And honestly, the Mavs are in a very peculiar situation where they have two aging superstars on their team now, as Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving. But they also had a little caveat by getting that 2029 pick. I believe that the Mavs are putting all their chips in now while also staking for the future. Because I do believe that they can see that Kyrie Irving can lead this team. He has been leading this team without Luka Doncic on the court, but he needs a little help. And that rim threat, that rim lob threat that you can have, Kyrie Irving never really has been the consistent guy in getting those passes to a big like that, but he's going to have to develop that because who else is going to get Anthony Davis the ball when he posts up? It's going to happen. But I don't believe that it will happen. And I know that the GM has said that basically they value defense and, they're in a win now mode, but their win now is basically this year and next year. And maybe the year after that. But after that, you got 3 years at best. They're not going to win. They're not even in position to win now, even with Anthony Davis, because there's so many other teams that's better than them. So I believe that they are doing all of this to trade the pieces off in a year or two. I believe that they are going to trade off Anthony Davis soon. And I believe they're going to trade off Kyrie Irving to get more picks so they can stake for the future and basically do something very similar to what the Oklahoma City Thunder has done. And so while this is a very, very shaky trade now for the Dallas Mavericks, Mavs fans, y'all will be okay if they continue on what I believe that they're going to do. But going back to the Lakers, the only downside that I see is that their defense is going to basically suffer. And I don't know what you're going to do with the rim protection. Maxi Kleber is a willing rim protector, but he's not no Anthony Davis, so that's going to go down. You're probably going to see a lot more zones, so be ready to see that. But similar to the Mavericks, I believe that the Lakers are also staking for their future. Because, like I said before, Luka Doncic is 25 years old. And you can make a future with him as long as you can get the conditioning concerns out the way. And now the reason why I believe this is super important is because LeBron James only got a couple years left. Even with Luka Doncic coming to the team, he might feel a little bit more spry for these next year or two, but he's not going to stay for maybe 3 or 4 more years. This is probably it. He's probably only got like a couple years left. But you can do once you offload LeBron James's massive contract, you can get many more players and basically make an offensive system very similar probably to the Dallas Mavericks have with Luka Doncic, but make your own system where JJ Redick is fully being able to coach more and more players and basically like put his coaching props and prowess up to the table. Because without LeBron James and being the savant that he is, you have to be able to coach and be able to put your players in great positions, which I do believe JJ Redick has. And so, in the same way that the Dallas Mavericks are stoking for their future and staking in their future to be, a team that's not going to be rebuilding for a very, very long time after Kyrie and Anthony Davis leaves, I believe the Los Angeles Lakers are doing the exact same thing by getting somebody who's very, very young. 25 years old is still very, very young, and getting basically assurance that once LeBron James leaves, they have enough cap space to build around their new superstar. And so this blockbuster trade has bits and pieces of greatness written all over it. It just kind of makes sense. The only issue is I believe that the Mavs are putting everything in, and I don't believe that they're going to win a championship this year or next year. But the great thing about this trade for both teams is that they're building for the future. And that's exactly what both teams need.